his story. He is the last member of the House XCL team I didn't mention. So please welcome Eric Yu.
All right. Awesome. How's it going, everybody? Good. Great. Thanks for making it out here. Real quick, how many of you follow me on social media at Hello Eric Yu? Okay, for everyone not raising your hand right now, please take out your phone, go on Instagram, look up Hello Eric Yu, and that info will be on here at the end as well. So like Michael said, today I'm going to walk through my presentation, just kind of about my story going from a corporate tech job, not feeling so great about that, into real estate, financial freedom, and now helping others do the same. So let's just get into it. So I'm going to take this story back 10 years to when I first started in college. Raise your hands real quick if your parents and your peers, all of them were like, hey, you go to high school, you go to college, and then you get that stable 9-to-5 job. How many of those people do we have out there? Good handful, more than half, right? That was basically the same for me, except I only had 3 options. My parents were immigrant parents, so I had to be either a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. Given that, I felt like my analytical skills were always strong, I went down the engineering path, right? So went to University of Michigan, go blue, and from there I got my computer science and engineering degree. Now, I was super ecstatic post-college because I was able to get my first job out of college at Facebook. And this was, that peak of the mountain that I'd been climbing for a long time. I'd been trying to get there for, 12 plus 4 years, 16 years of my life to get to this milestone. So I still remember I was on the plane back from the Bay Area. I was checking my laptop and I was like, oh shit, offer letter from Facebook, right? And at that moment, my life kind of paused where I was like, wow, this is it. I don't have to do anything else for the rest of my life. I'm gonna be happy for the rest of my life. Passion, promotions, love it. And for some time, that was exactly what it was like, right? So this is me, first day at Facebook, 2017, super starry-eyed, new grad, just ready to go. I'm gonna go crush it here. I'm gonna become the next CEO of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. You better watch your seat because I'm coming for you. And then these terms kept happening. And what I kept hearing is, you create a lot of impact, you focus on growth, and then you'll get a promotion, right? And the first time that I heard that narrative, first time I heard the story, I was like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me. I want to have more ownership. I want to do more things. I want to make more money. This all makes sense. So year one, going from E3 to E4 for people who are in tech, that's just junior to standard level engineer. That was a fun process for me, right? And I was like, yeah, I could see myself doing this for a while. But then the cycle just keeps going and going and going, right? The moment I got to the next level, I was once again told I need to focus on growth, I need to focus on impact, and I'll get promoted. And then somewhere along the way, I was like, this doesn't feel right to me, right? Every time I get to a new level, I'm no longer enough again, right? And I know people say hey, you could stay at a senior level engineer at a company forever. But me, as the kind of person I am, I would not feel okay with that. And all your peers around you are constantly climbing. So there's this pressure that you're not enough in your job. And I was like, okay, something's got to change, right? I didn't want to be that guy who had a carrot dangling in front of me, always feeling more money, more prestige, more whatever was the right thing. I wanted to be the one that was in control of my life. So at this point, I came across, nope, not that slide, this slide. I came across what I'm sure a lot of you have come across, BiggerPockets, Think and Grow Rich, and of course the classic Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? So this was back in probably end of 2019 for me when I really started exploring these things. I was like, okay, other people have been successful in real estate. I can do the same thing. Let me take some time, figure it out, do my research, and then once I have the context, once I have the confidence, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna execute. So looked into a lot of strategies, and if for anyone on TikTok these days, Airbnb rental arbitrage is a super hot topic. People talk about it all the time. And I also saw it as kind of a low-risk way to get into real estate. And this is before I knew a lot more about real estate, so I'll give you reasons why you shouldn't go into rental arbitrage a little bit later, but this is what I was first thinking, right? So Airbnb rental arbitrage, did my research, end of 2019. We're in early 2020 timeline now. And on February 13th, 2020, so this is 2.5 years after I started my job, I was like, I'm done. I'm gonna quit my job. So I put in my 2 weeks notice. The video didn't play, but there's a video of me like waving goodbye to Instagram. So I was gonna say goodbye, and after that 2 weeks notice, this is my final day. You can see here in this photo, we had a little party for me. So I was, I got filmed by my mentee chugging half a bottle of soju. So that's her final memory of me at Instagram. So I was ready to take on the world, super excited, and what could go wrong? Anyone want to gander or guess what happened next for me? COVID. This bad boy happened. So with COVID hitting, all of a sudden, entire landscape of the travel industry changed, right? We saw it with the airlines. Flights were getting canceled left and right. And in all the Airbnb groups that I had joined, world is closed due to COVID. Bill Gates has warned about a deadly pandemic like the coronavirus. Man, it was not a good time in the world. Same case for me. I was a part of a lot of different Airbnb Facebook groups, and all of a sudden I was starting to see people were canceling left and right. So all of a sudden these people that I had been looking at, seeing they were making $2,000, $3,000 a month per property, 0% occupancy over the next 2 months, losing a bunch of money. I'd like to say I'm a risk taker, but I'm not going to jump into something that seems just like imminent doom, right? Like you could convince me to do a lot of stuff, but not go into Airbnb right during the height of the pandemic. So I didn't do that. And instead, what I had to do was cry a little bit. And then after crying, I actually had to go back and message my manager. This wounded my ego very severely, y'all. At Facebook, the way it works is like you put in your 2 weeks notice, and then whatever remaining like paid time off you have, it gets tacked on before you actually are like officially gone from the company. So with all this happening, with like the economy shutting down, I fortunately had enough PTO to like pull me through until March 12th. And this was my very last day at the company. And I had to message my manager. I was like, hey, do you know if there's any way for me to do like a 3-month contract or like project-based contract work? His response to me is like, if you want to spend 3 more months working at Instagram, I've heard of a team within Instagram that has super exciting designs and just needs an Android engineer to lead the project. Tongue face. Basically what he was saying is, yeah, you can stay, but we need you to come back now and you need to commit. I was sad, right? Because when you start on that real estate investing train, when you start hearing about financial freedom, when you see what everyone else has done, it kind of gives you this like belief that like, yeah, like let's fucking go. It's gonna happen, right? And then like within a month of me like making that plan, changing my mindset, all got stopped and I had to go back to the golden handcuffs again, right? So that was not fun for me, but I am pretty glad because instead of going into Airbnb arbitrage and instead of wasting that glorious W-2 that helps you qualify for loans with lenders, I stuck around. And that's when Airbnb house hacking came up next. So I'm gonna take a quick pause in here. How many of you have actually house hacked before? And then how many of you are wanting to house hack? And then how many of you never want to house hack again? Okay, I feel like it's a spectrum, right? Like before you get into house hacking, like everyone needs to go through that experience. Then you like live with your neighbors, live with your roommates for a while and you're like, this is okay, but I don't want to do it again. So once you do house hacking a couple times, it's gives you the experience to move on to other and bigger projects, which I'll get into a little bit later on too. So Airbnb house hacking came next, and let me talk a little bit about the context and why behind it, right? So 2020, this was a little bit after I had to stay at my job. I was curious what my financial picture actually looked like. It doesn't matter what the exact breakdowns are, but just know that more than 50% of my expenses were going to rent in San Francisco, right? That's a lot of money, right? So instead of thinking about it of how I can increase, more of my income, what could I do to decrease my expenses? What could I do to decrease rent? I'm sure a lot of you have very similar breakdowns where rent makes up a big portion. And that's where we got to house hacking, right? You've got your traditional way of buying a home, which is the classic 20% down, forever home owner. You've got your investors who are thinking like the fix and flips, the kinds of projects that you buy and hold. And then you've got us in the middle, which do both. We're the crazy sons of bitches that do both. So after that, with house hacking, you've got, you can do your single family home rent by rooms. You could do your duplexes where you live in one, rent out the other. You could do triplexes or quadplexes. That's at least what I saw when I was exploring BiggerPockets. Yeah, all of a sudden I was like, okay, I can see my path toward financial freedom again. Doesn't mean I have to quit my job. I can stay in my job, and I can also start building that path. The only problem with that was I lived in the Bay Area, and gosh, Seattle's getting really expensive too, but the Bay Area at the time was even crazier. If I wanted to try house hacking in San Francisco at the time, I had to buy something worth between $1.5 to $1.6 million. Yeah, again, that was a big pill to swallow, and I was like, there has to be another way to go about this. And I'm sure for folks in Seattle looking, it seems like it's a struggle as well, but I'll tell you how you can still house hack at the end of this presentation. So with that in mind, I was like, maybe, actually no. So real quick, just numbers breakdown. The way I saw it is, there's benefits to renting and there's benefits to traditional house hacking. With renting, you obviously have the flexibility, right? You can own up and move, you can pay a lease break fee, you're not really tied to an asset anywhere, but your money is just going nowhere. You're spending this and it's just out of your pocket, you don't get to build toward anything. Traditional house hacking, it would probably bring my payments down quite a bit if I did find that $1.4, $1.5 million property in California, but it was just so expensive in California that I didn't want to buy a $1.5 million property as my very first property. So crossed out both of those options. And what happened next is how we actually started into our Airbnb house hacking journey. So this is my lovely fiance, Wanda. What we did is together, we went on a little life brainstorming session. So we booked an Airbnb for a weekend, went down there, and we're just like, we know we want to pursue financial freedom. We know we want to live a different life. How do we actually go about doing it? For anyone who has a partner, whether it's a romantic partner or a business partner, this was an incredibly meaningful session for us. Not to sound cheesy, but it was actually a life-changing session because it completely changed what the last 3 years looked like for us. So if you want to have a conversation with me about that afterwards, I can kind of walk through what we did. So important to align with the critical decision makers in your life. And I think this helped us get on the same page on what we were going to do. So our 30K by 30 journey was basically this idea that, hey, by 2030, we want to have $30,000 a month of passive income. At the time, that's 3 years ago now. That seemed kind of lofty, right? Because that's almost $360,000 a year of passive income. And so what we did is we posted in a Facebook group called Asian Hustle Network. We told them about our plans, our goals, and the people in there, it's so funny because you could see the limiting beliefs and the mindsets of the people that commented back. There's some people that were just like, dude, no way, there's no chance. That's so unrealistic, you're never gonna get there. And then on the other side of things, there were people that were just like, why are you setting your goals so low? That's nothing at all, right? So we quickly learned that, everyone has their own opinion. We gotta stick to what we believe and what we think is possible. So we set this out as our goal. So with the 30K by 30 journey, we realized that we can do house hacking, which I think all of us are trying to do. But what if we combined our house hack with Airbnb as well? And this is where things got really interesting for us, right? Because with Airbnb house hacking, we crossed out renting, traditional house hacking, but on this one, we would be able to house hack in California and also get higher cash flows. So the main thing with Airbnb is you're probably gonna get more money in per month, but it's gonna be a little bit more work. For us at the time, that didn't matter as much. We were okay putting in the time, putting in the work, but we wanted to find an asset that would cash flow upon us leaving. So we started looking at around different cities, and in October of 2020, we picked up our first house hack in Redding, California. Now you might notice it's a $429,000 purchase price point, right? So that would probably be equivalent to looking for something down in the maybe Tacoma or Olympia area. That's kind of like Redding relative to San Francisco. We were 3.5 hours north of the big city, but we did our research, we ran our numbers, and it made the most sense for us to go here. So this first house hack that we did was set up with this guest house in the backyard, and the main house. Main house was a 4-bed, 2-bath, and then the guest house was 252 square feet. 252 square feet is not a lot. It's not a lot. When you've got 2 people working remotely together for a year in a 252 square feet guest house, that's why you decide you never want to house hack again. So we did it. We made it out alive, and honestly, I think our relationship got strengthened as a result of it, because we'll get into that another time. So let's talk about the fun part with this project, right? This was our first time getting into real estate. We tackled a lot of these like small rehab renovations ourselves. Really didn't do much on this one. Just swapped out some fixtures, did some paint. This is what it looked like before. This is what bedroom 2 looked like before. And then, oh, I skipped it. This is what it looked like after. Bedroom 2 before with the green and purple walls turned into this one with the red walls and the gold. And then bedroom 3 with the blue turned into our green Zen room. So I've said this to so many people, but like a fresh paint of coat can it just changes everything, right? Perception matters. Perception impacts value. With this better perception, we got higher values and we got higher income as well. And all it took was like, I don't know, 6 hours of painting and maybe $300-400 or so. So this was what we did, and then there should be another slide, but anyway, after launching, how do we actually do, right? Because I think the idea is one thing, but actually seeing the numbers is another. And what was crazy is I remember I put the listing live sometime in November at like 10 a.m. in the morning. By 12 p.m. that day, we had gotten 2 bookings that covered the entire mortgage. I was like off the roof, right? And of course, Wanda had to ground me and like bonk me on the head and said, dude, we're priced way too low. There's no reason we should have been booked that quickly. And of course she's right, she's always right. Happy wife, happy life. I will soon learn this. So in our very first month afterwards, we had 73% occupancy on a gross revenue of $5,500. So before other expenses, that was $3,000 on top of the mortgage. After the other expenses, we were probably around like $2,500 of cash flow. And at this point, we're like, holy, this could work. Like we could actually make this happen. So this was the Colorful Haven. This was our very first Airbnb listing. And let's go really deep dive on the numbers now. So first of all, who knows what cash on cash return is? Or actually, who doesn't know what cash on cash return is? Okay. Just real quick, it's just a measure of how much cash you invested and how much return you get, right? So if I put $50,000 into something, I get $10,000 on top of it. I got $10,000 over $50,000, which is a 20% cash on cash. If you look at the S&P 500 over like the last 30 years or so, it's averaged around 10%. If you look at bonds over that same time period, it's averaged around 7%. So those are kind of benchmarks that we can look at in terms of reasonable and average returns, right? For us in this project, we put in $36,000 of cash total. So that's $21,000 for the down payment. We negotiated with the sellers to cover all the closing costs, and then for all the fix-up, paint, fixtures, and furnishings, it was about 15 grand. So 36 grand into the project. Year 1, we had $38,000 of cash flow. So that was about $85,000 of revenue, $46,000 of expenses, for a net cash flow of around $3,200 a month. That gives you a cash on cash of 105%. So we're doing almost 10 times better than if we had put that same money into the stock market. Now granted, yes, there's sweat equity, there's time that goes into it, but either way, this kind of return really outsized what we would have done if we invested in other places. And the reasons for that we can go into at another time, but leverage is key. The next thing to look at is this metric that I call the net worth return on investment, right? So that previous slide with cash on cash, we're just looking at the cash I put in and the cash I pulled out. But when you buy real estate, it's not just that, right? You get the home value increasing, you get the loan pay down, and then you also get the rent savings and cash flow. So with all those factors combined together, with our $38,000 cash flow, $36,000 in rent savings that we no longer had to pay in San Francisco, $8,700 of loan pay down, and it appreciated $42,000 in the first year over our initial investment. When you add all of these things together, we had a net worth return on investment of around 343%, okay? So let that sink in real quick, because I think a lot of the time when you think about these properties, you're not always getting that full picture, right? And the House Hack Seattle calculator gives you that full picture, so you should definitely use that, and if you don't, Michael House will send you one afterwards. It's not just the cash flow, and I really want to anchor on that, especially when interest rates are so high right now. Don't be so focused on the cash flow, because you're going to be missing out on some of the other benefits that are equally important. So just remember, like, even though BiggerPockets is telling you cash flow is king, cash flow is the only thing, that's not the market we're in right now, and you have to be investing based on what the current market gives you. So at the time, I could have all of these things. Right now, this cash flow would be a lot lower, and that's okay with me too. Even without appreciation in there, it was a 228% net worth return on investment. So overall, great investment. Thought I was really crushing it, but I was still working, right? I was still at Instagram, and I had to figure out something there. So this was December 23rd, 2020. Texted Wanda, I was like, man, I feel like we have to do another life planning retreat. I want to map out 2021 and me leaving IG. It's just draining me so much thinking about work every day. And I'm assuming some of you out there probably feel that way right now as well. The upside of me leaving makes more sense, but I want to outline a plan. I guess it's also like, would you be willing to support the both of us at Google for a while as I try to grow out this project in our brand? And remember what I was saying earlier, guys, about the whole alignment piece and having your partners on board and how important that is? That was like the value of us doing that session, because we both saw and had a shared vision about what we wanted. And she is not here right now. This is Wanda. I think she's actually working right now, which is so sad. She said that she would be willing to at least carry the team from like a W-2 front as I took the risk and went for the home run hits. So could not have been here without her. Love her so much, and I'm super excited to start our married life journey very soon as well. She's not here, but can we give her a round of applause anyway? Yeah. So do your life planning retreats. They matter. But as I was like, okay, I'm about to quit, something super unexpected happened, which of course I got promoted, you know? Geez, oh man, growth, impact, promotion, am I right? And mind you, like at this point, my mind is fully preoccupied with real estate. I actually think I had probably 3 months of my worst performance at work at the time. And I'm pretty sure my manager knew that too. But my manager also knew that he could not lose me. So it was an extremely enticing promotion, right? I was like, oh, that's a lot more money. They're the golden handcuffs again, right? I can feel it. I can really feel it. I don't want to leave. But with the life planning retreat and really mapping out our lives, which for us, it was focused on family. And for us, it was about, in the future, when we do have kids, being able to be there for all the big moments, being able to be there for the baseball games, the piano recitals, and not having to compromise on those moments. That was kind of that end goal vision, right? So there was more clarity for me, so I knew that even with more money, it was time to make a change. So as sad as it was to turn down the promotion, I still planned and exited Facebook. And I'll talk about how long it took to get there, but I'm gonna really quickly skim through the next few properties that we picked up. Second property that we picked up, also in Reading, our whole thinking was, hey, we already have the team here, why don't we scale up and focus here? Bought this house that had a pool. We did flooring for the first time, wrote something on the subfloor in case anyone in the future decides to go pick it up. This floor was assembled with love by Wanda and Eric. And I also wrote something that said, P.S. when we started this, Bitcoin was $60,000. Is it at $1 million yet? It's not at $1 million. So we did that. And then this was our pool house. And this has been our highest performing property to date in terms of overall revenue. All in numbers real quick, $50,000 into the property, $35,000 cash flow in year one. The reason why that's a little misleading is because that was 9 months of a year that we had $35,000 cash flow with a cash on cash return of 69%. So still pretty good. The only difference is we had to do a higher down payment on this. So we had to do 10% down because we didn't own or occupy it. So the cash on cash is a little less, but overall still seeing around $3,000 a month of cash flow. net worth return on investment, all that good stuff. And then third property, second house hack. So with this one, this was our last house hack in Reading. So we lived in this little garage unit up here, and then we Airbnb'd the downstairs. I miss this house. This house is great. With this one, we had to do also a lot of paint, also had to do flooring. This is some of the weird stuff that you find when you get into real estate. Someone had put like this really old carpet over really nice wood flooring. So we actually did not need to replace those floors, which is great. Here's my dad helping me out too. It's a whole production. It was so much fun. And that came to be the artsy abode, where we put a hot tub in, and yeah, this is the artsy abode. So real quick numbers. Again, we house hacked this one. So we put $44,000 down payment. First year cash flow was a bit less on this one, $15,000 cash flow. So cash on cash return was 33%. So going back to the standard metrics of S&P 500 and the bond market, still better than that, but not nearly as great. So again, not every investment has to be a home run, but for us, it was like, this is still a return that we'd be happy with. And additionally, once we actually moved out of the upstairs unit and moved here to Seattle, we were able to convert the upstairs to a midterm rental that we now rent out to like traveling nurses and people visiting for a couple months at a time. When you combine all those together, I wish I had another slide, but the cash on cash return jumps up to 77% because we're able to get about $1,500 to $2,000 per month with the upstairs unit as well. So I know I went through a lot of numbers. If you can't tell, I'm still a very numbers driven guy, and that's how I operate as an agent as well. I care a lot about making sure that people understand the numbers in addition to like not going into something underestimating. So July 2021 hit, and that was the milestone moment where I got to a point with Wanda that we were between 6 to 10 grand of cash flow a month, just depending on seasonality and whatnot. So I quit my job in 2021 and freed myself from the shackles. And thank you for listening to the passive income portion. So I've got a little bit more for you guys, okay? I think this is the message I always want to convey whenever I talk about this journey, passive income, financial freedom, and it's that it doesn't stop when you get to financial freedom, right? So I, for a long time, glorified this idea that once I had an extra stream of revenue, life would be great, I would have everything figured out, and I could just do whatever the heck I wanted to do. And I think a lot of people, especially online gurus, they really advocate for that, right? They're like, oh, you can travel the world, you can, hide in your basement for a year, whatever floats your boat, right? You could do that. But I've learned that quitting the job, having financial freedom, it's not the end of something. It's the start of the next chapter, the next journey. And it's so important to figure out your mission and your why along the way. So all of a sudden I had all these directions that I could go, and instead of feeling so happy after quitting my job, I actually felt more confused and lost than ever, right? So instead of confronting those confusing and lost feelings, I decided to drown myself in video games instead. So I played Tricky Towers, which is this Tetris game. At some point I was top 50 in the world at this game. It was no joke, 2 months straight of 5 hours a day of this game. There's a theme song to this game that Wanda would hear me hum all the time. And I think 2 weeks in, Wanda just yelled at me and it's Eric, you need to get your shit together, man. So that was the Tricky Towers phase. We don't talk about that phase. So again, want to emphasize this. I always thought that passive income was the destination, but really is just the beginning. Let me expound on that a little bit more. You know how when you're working your corporate job, you've got the next level as kind of that thing that keeps you in the rat race, right? Well, I talk about this a bit on my social media, and I think other people should talk about it more, but real estate itself can become another rat race very quickly. You can want more passive income, more properties, 100 units, 200 units, And it's hard to realize that you're just playing a different game, even though it might be another job. I think sometimes people get lost in the fact that, hey, now I'm financially free, but if you keep adding more to your plate, you're not really financially free, right? So The whole thing is, passive income is not the destination. It gives you the time to figure out what you actually want to do, and that's what I emphasize so much, right? Get your passive income, figure out what you're actually passionate about, and then you can keep going. So what I found, and I'm still figuring out my why right now, right? I think it's always changing, and that's something that I'm always learning as well. But I genuinely have a great time talking with and helping other people and getting people started on this journey themselves. So that's been my focus over the last year and a half. And then a couple months ago, myself and Dennis joined the House Hack Seattle team because we had a lot of aligned visions. And yeah, skip this slide. Real quick, where I'm at today. So like I said, on the House Hack Seattle team, I also run the Washington Short-Term and Corporate Rental Facebook group, if you're a part of that. This is me and Wanda moving here to Seattle last year. And then lastly, and I'm not going to go into this project very much today, I am building a DADU in Seattle. Because I think one of the questions that people here have a lot is, how do you actually house hack in a high cost of living area? It's a little bit different. I'll save that story for another time, but real quick, just like breakdown, we're calling it our advanced house hacking strategy, where instead of your traditional buy a unit, Airbnb it out, or buy a unit, rent out rooms, we're actually building a unit, moving into the unit that we build, live there for 2 years, and then sell it to get all the gains, basically tax-free. I'm not a CPA, but if you want to talk a little bit more about that afterwards, I'm happy to walk into the details, as are any of the other House Hack Seattle members here as well. So this is my project that I'm working on right now. It should be done at the end of October. Super excited about it. If you want to follow along the progress on the build, the numbers, and why we're doing it, please go follow Hello Eric U on Instagram, and I've got more details there. All right, that is the full story. Thank you so much. All right, do we have time for questions?
Yeah.
Cool.
So the midterm rental, you hired the same property manager for the short-term rental, or the separate property manager?
We do have the same property manager for both.
For one of the properties, you said it was not owner occupied, but you got an option to pay 10% down. How is that possible?
Yeah, so we did so the question was, for a non-owner occupied home, how did you do 10% down? We've gotten a lot of mixed and varying feedback from CPAs, but we got a 10% down second home loan, which basically we have to go to the property a couple times a year, which we do for maintenance purposes and whatnot, and then for the rest of the time we have it on Airbnb. Some CPAs say this is fine, others don't, so just check with your CPA to get the guidance there.
Now that we're done, or potentially done with COVID, what's your thought on arbitrage versus the purchase model for Airbnb?
Oh gosh, yeah, I forgot to mention why I don't like arbitrage.
Explain what arbitrage is.
Yeah. So Airbnb rental arbitrage is this strategy where people go talk to landlords, they rent out properties from these landlords, and then in turn repurpose the property for Airbnb. Right, so if you're renting the property for, let's say, $3,000 a month, but your Airbnb can make you $5,000 a month, you pocket the difference. With rental arbitrage, there's a couple of risks I don't like. Obviously, people have had a lot of success with it, but in my opinion, there are some massive benefits with owning real estate, if you can, that outweigh not owning real estate. So the principal pay down, the appreciation, the tax benefits, there's a huge tax benefit for people that have high W-2s that I didn't even talk about here with owning Airbnbs that basically can give you a new down payment every year. So I don't like rental arbitrage because one, you don't get any of those nice benefits of owning real estate. And then the second thing is you're always at the whim of the landlord as well. So obviously if you can build a really nice relationship with them, it could be long-term, but more times than not, if they're like, hey, I want you out at the end of the year, you got to move all your furniture, you either got to sell it and then you have to start over. And for most people, to even pay back all that furniture is going to be 1 year later. So you might finally get to a break-even point, then you got to start over again. So regardless of in COVID or out of COVID, I don't like arbitrage as much anymore.
Two questions. When you are buying a property and turning it into an Airbnb, there's a certain marination time where you have to fill it with furniture. You have to have to show profit over a period of time and either have it show as a rental or as a company. And then lenders look at those differently. So the next time you can purchase another property is oftentimes the next tax season.
Mhm.
How are you doing it so quickly? And the second question is, for Seattle as an example, you're limited to the amount of Airbnbs you can have in Seattle. And likewise I know in California, and you look wherever you go to set up an Airbnb, they have a lot of rules, and you gotta go in there and make sure that not only can you get the property quickly, but you know all the Airbnb rules in that area. So there's two kind of separate.
Yeah, got it. So 2 questions. First question was around like, how do you scale so quickly? Lenders might not be able to keep offering you loans. Couple things. One, my kind of like ideal niche property that I focus on for Airbnb is the sub 500K properties that can push like 70 to 80K of revenue. Now, those were easier to find like 3 years ago, but they're still out there. So I don't target markets where it's gonna eat up my debt to income right away. Second thing is I was making a good boatload of money when I was at Facebook, so I was able to leverage that income to buy properties. At this point, Wanda is still working, so she's helping us acquire more loans. And then we've set up a structure where, actually I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that anymore once I'm married, but previously my business would rent out the properties from her to offset her debt to income, so she could keep buying more properties because my business kept renting it from her. So, okay, let me step back from the rental arbitrage thing real quick, because I'm technically doing rental arbitrage with Wanda.
But it's technically yours.
Yes, but it's also technically mine. Cool. And then the second question you asked is around like the regulations and scaling up when, you know, in Seattle City, you're allowed to have 1 non-owner occupied property and 1 owner occupied property. In Seattle, it's just hard. You know, there's not really a way to get around it. I would always advise following the city's rules to not get yourself into any kind of trouble. But that's why you want to target markets where they have regulations that are also favorable to short-term rentals. So just as an example, there's a lot of markets out in Michigan that I'm currently considering because they have those kinds of regulations.
At what point did you get a CPA, and like when did you decide to get a CPA?
Yeah, the question was, when did I get a CPA and when should you get a CPA? I got a CPA after the 3rd property, so I was still doing taxes that first year by myself. When should you get a CPA? That's a tough question to answer. I think there's like that initial ramp up period where you're like first getting started with properties, you're doing everything by yourself, the bookkeeping, invoicing, all of that. And I think at that time it's just like learning all the process, but at some point you get so busy that it's just like one more thing on the plate that you don't want to think about anymore. For us, it was around that 3 property mark that we just did not want to have that on our plate anymore. But for different people, it could be different. I'd say it's a question of your time and where you value it to decide when a CPA makes sense. Also for the tax code that they understand.
For rentals, for your Airbnb rates, did you have like a set percentage that you're going to increase it at, or do you plan out your rental income increases throughout like the next year, or do you do it by the market every year by looking at the market?
Yeah, it's by the market. As much as I would like to say every year Airbnb income just increases by like 3%, it's not going to be that steady. So transparently, right, like our Airbnb revenue is down by like 16% this year compared to last year. Now we're still profitable, so it's fine, but it's just dictated by how the market forces are moving, and also supply has increased a lot, so you just have to be a little bit pickier and a little bit better about the properties you buy.
Do you look at any criteria location-wise when you're buying a property for short-term rental, like near a school or touristy place, something like that?
Yeah, the question is, do you look at any like specific criteria when you're buying a short-term rental, like proximity to different destinations and whatnot? This was not intentional, but the properties that we have for short-term rentals are all close to national parks or like some kind of nature-y thing. again, I'm a very numbers driven person, so I looked more at the numbers and if they met the target return I was looking for. I do think it's nice buying in places where you have some kind of destination people are coming for and having like a clear hypothesis on who you're targeting, right? Some people that do Airbnb, all about vacation travelers. Other people that do an Airbnb, all about business travelers. Depending on where you are on the spectrum, I think kind of dictates which one you go for.
When do you decide to like jump up the walk-in from self-managed to like a property manager now that you're living in Seattle? How has that changed?
Sorry, do you mind repeating that again?
So like when did you do self-managed to have like a property manager for your Airbnb properties now that you're living in Seattle? Like when would you recommend?
Got it. So question is around like, when do you shift from self-management to property management? It was that 3 property mark again. So same time as we got the CPA, it was also the same time where I was like, we're costing ourselves a little bit on like overall cash flow, but I'm gonna free up so many extra hours in my day. Because with Airbnb, obviously, the messages come at random times, right? I could get a message at 11:30 p.m. for all I know and just not see it. And I didn't want to have that in my life anymore. So that 3rd property is when it was like enough is enough. I think some people love the like fixing toilets at 11 p.m. thing. That's not me. So kind of depends on personal preference, but I'd say like that 3 property mark is probably a good spot.
Cool. Yeah, I'm sure everybody has a lot more questions for Eric, but you're not going anywhere, are you? You're gonna stick around?
Yeah, I'll stick around.